Welcome to the Dope People Podcast.
Thank you.
My name is Scott Steward. I am the host of the Dope People Podcast. And on the Dope People Podcast, we highlight some of the dopest people that do dope things. And today is that. We have some dope people here that are going to talk about some dope things. But right now, today we have Miss Jasmine McCluskey. Y'all can make some noise for Miss Jasmine in the building, y'all. Yeah. I met you, Jasmine. Well, welcome to Dope People first.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I appreciate you.
Absolutely. Before I really go into all of that, I really kind of like to highlight people's accolades, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the truth of the matter is, I don't really know your accolades like that, right?
Okay.
What I do know is we met through Mark Lloyd from Gentleman of Distinguished.
Yes.
Gentleman of Distinction.
Yes.
GOD, Gentleman of Distinction. Through the work we were doing at St. Sabina.
Yes.
At Father Flager's school. And I remember when he brought you, I'm like, who was that? You know what I mean? It's like, that's Jasmine. I was like, okay, she's, all right, let's see what's up. So you, and not only did I recognize that you are stunning, you are beautiful, but you knew what you was talking about, right? So I think that was the part I was like, okay, I can engage in a conversation with you because I knew you were younger, but I also knew that you had the professional acumen as an educator. So that's kind of where we met. And we started having some conversations and then got into this conversation about generating wealth.
Yes.
But before I go into all of that, we have a thing that we do on Dope People Podcast.
Mm-hmm.
We play a little game
to
let the people kind of really get to know you a little bit.
Okay.
And it's called This or That.
Okay.
Have you ever heard of This or That?
Yes.
Yeah, you all ever heard of This or That?
Yes.
Okay. So it's meant to be fun, right?
Okay.
It's meant to be tongue-in-cheek. You know, I'm going to ask you some things just to kind of give the people some real insight into who you are. Are you ready?
I am ready.
It's not going to be long.
I'm ready.
Okay.
I'm ready.
All right. Cookies or cake?
Ugh.
You're not supposed to think about this too long. It's just like, get it, right? Cake. Okay.
Yeah.
Summer or winter?
Summer.
Okay. A night on the town or an evening at home?
The evening at home.
Okay. All right. Comedy or horror?
Horror.
Wow. Interesting. Pancakes or waffles?
Waffles.
White meat or dark meat?
Dark meat.
Travel by plane or travel by boat?
Ooh, plane. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Write? Paper, pencil, pen, right?
Okay.
Or text?
Right.
Talk on the phone or text?
Talk on the phone. Yeah.
Okay. Audible books, like listening to books, audio books, or reading a book?
Reading a book.
Reading a book.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Work or play?
Work. That feels like play.
Oh, that was a good one. Y'all make some noise for Jasmine, y'all. That was easy. Okay. You sent me some questions that you want me to ask, right? I don't like just jumping in. I want to kind of walk into it. Tell us, what kind of student were you when you were in middle school?
Talked a lot.
I bet. I can see that.
I would say as far as grades, probably like a B student. Yeah, a B student, plays sports. So.
Are you from Chicago?
So I spent about till I was in second grade on the east side of Chicago, then moved out to the south suburbs and finished growing up there.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you do when you're not working? How do you spend your time when you're not working?
Not working. Okay. So I'm learning work-life balance, but right now I am in the midst of building and it's fun to me. So when I'm not working, I'm reading, hopefully on somebody's beach, you know, just to step away completely. But
when you're not working,
when I'm not working, I'm reading, meditating. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Cool. You just had a birthday.
I did.
My mom is in the building, and I know better than to ask a woman about her age. But you did just have a birthday, right?
I did.
Was there any significance about this birthday?
Yes. This birthday was ground shaking for me. And ground shaking in a sense of overcoming so much and walking into that next chapter, that next phase. And I was grateful, grounded, gracious. And I really just spent it reflecting and how I want to make these next couple of years the best years I have ever experienced.
And how's that transition been for you?
That transition is going so good so far. Look,
You're moving up out Chicago.
Yes, I am moving. Yeah. I am moving.
Make some noise for people who move. Move. I want to move. I just let me just call it. I ain't got the courage to leave. I'm spooked to leave. So shout out to people who can get up and go. For real. That means that's something. That's something to definitely consider. I'm sure it gets the blood boiling. I'm sure it gets the adrenaline going.
More than that, it is absolutely terrifying. You're leaving everything you once knew, everything that shaped you, everyone, all of your best friends, your parents, your siblings, your nieces and nephews, everything, And so stepping into that next phase and just the unknown, it makes it a little, I'll say, it is nerve-wracking, but one thing's for sure and two things for certain, I didn't come this far just to come this far.
Amen.
And the path that God has me on is going to take me way further than staying here. And it's not to say that I couldn't do it here. It's just God wants me somewhere else. And so I'm being obedient. And so I'm leaving.
Nice. So let's talk about what you do when you are working.
Yeah.
You are a financial advisor.
Yes.
What is a financial advisor?
Yes. So a financial advisor is basically someone who is going to help you make controlled and informed decisions. Whether that may be budgeting, life insurance, wills, trust, investing, even mortgages, right? The whole entire holistic approach, and then get down to the bottom of it. That way you can feel whole when you're going in and making those financial choices and decisions. So it's just like you think of like a financial coach. Yeah. Every professional athlete, so to say, has a coach, right? If you want to get good at something, you hire a coach. If you need a doctor, if you're sick, you go to the doctor, right? So if you need any assistance, want to grow further, or even just need help where you are, you're going to look into getting a financial advisor.
And if someone wants to start building wealth today, because everybody talk about it.
Yeah.
Where should they begin?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say first and foremost is self-awareness. You have to know where you are and where you stand today and say, look, my money is doing great. I want to go further, or my money not doing so great. I need to grow, So it's just self-awareness. Excuse me. And then the first step, so that's number one. So that's step number one. Step number two is going to be looking into getting a financial advisor, someone who can assist you on those next steps. And then number three is commitment and execution. You cannot go to a place that you've never been without committing to it. You have to commit and start taking those steps forward.
In this conversation, this is the $17 trillion conversation. Omari is going to talk to us. He's going to come up, and he and Sharnice are going to talk to us a little bit about how we can leverage our businesses to participate in the $17 trillion economy. Right? And he's going to explain more about that. It sounds like you're more focused on individuals and their personal wealth.
Yes.
Personal finance, right? So a lot of people are talking about being healthy, being physically fit, going to the gym. What does it mean to you to be financially fit?
Financially fit to me, number one, is just having your financial house in order. And what is a financial house, right? You want to build that thing brick by brick, not with straw, right? Not with feathers. It ain't cute. Okay, you got to be real honest with yourself and say, hey, I'm going to build this thing brick by brick. You're going to have your life insurance in order. You're going to have your 3 accounts, your emergency fund, your short-term account, and then your wealth building account, which is your retirement account. You're going to have your wills and trust, right? In the Black community, one thing that I noticed is that we can attain the assets, right? We can get all of that. We buy the houses, we got the bank accounts, we got the businesses, but then we lose it all. Nothing is passed down generation to generation, and so when we're thinking about leaving a legacy, you leave a legacy and inheritance for your kids. Well, if there's no will in place, no trust in place, we buying multi-million-dollar homes and we losing them the next, you know what I'm saying? If somebody, in probate, right? Yeah. So just having those things in place as well as a budget, being clear, like, hey, what's coming in my account? What's going out? What are my bills? I talk to people all the time and they're like, I don't know what subscription that is. And
right.
What do you mean you don't know? Like, that's something you need to know, right? Do you need it, right? Can we cut that out of the budget? And so I'm just walking these, principles through with my clients.
Yeah, it's because I know I'm not the only one that sometimes that account is that Netflix and took me down. It just happened to. I know I'm not by myself on that.
Right.
No, but
right.
So what were you raised in a house where you all talked about money?
Absolutely not.
So with that, what's one myth that you've heard about money, and what's the truth about that myth?
Yeah. Well, I want to touch just a little bit on was I raised in a household with money. As a matter of fact, I was raised with working class parents, so they had money, right? But it was tight. You couldn't do the extracurricular activities, right? Shout out to the community for allowing me to participate. My aunt at the time, she paid for me to be in sports. You know what I'm saying? So that's how I was able to be an athlete. But one of the myths in right now, the work that I'm doing right now, is that, life insurance with your job is just enough. Right. And we see that those policies typically range from 15 to about 50,000. And so just to kind of fast pace it, when we're talking about homes that are $300,000, well, you leave the home, right? God forbid anything happens to that person, they pass away, $50,000. Then what happens to the home? Now you're leaving a mortgage to somebody else. I'll just tell you a little bit about my story. Again, like I said, didn't come from wealth or money or anything like that. Student loans out of the world, right, to get through college, because that's all I knew and that's all they taught me. And so when I got into this industry years later, I'm now understanding the concept of money, right, and legacy and wealth building and everything. And my aunt goes, well, I'm going to leave you my house. And I'm like, well, how much is your life insurance policy? And she's like, oh, I got it with my job. And I'm like, okay, well, let me see it, And not to put my aunt's business out there, but we keeping it real, right? So it was about $20,000. I said, you're not leaving me a house, you're leaving me a mortgage. You're leaving a burden, and I had to tell her, what makes you think I want to take over your mortgage and mine? You see what I'm saying? So we gotta have these conversations, not just with ourselves, right? At the dinner table, at Thanksgiving, these conversations need to be held.
I really want to ask you, I want to dig in a little bit more and ask you, why do we think why do you think it's so hard? But it's such a trivial question. And I know the answer is deeply rooted in what our challenges are around money. I know there's some emotion around money. People get money and get happy. They kind of lose themselves.
Yeah.
When you don't have money, you could be down and a little depressed. But what do you think? If you can start to scratch the surface, because Omari and Sharnice are going to come and we might dig in some tonight.
Yeah.
But what do you think the real problem is with wrapping your mind around establishing wealth?
I think there's multiple layers to that. And, when Omari and Sharnice come up, we all have different experiences. So I'll speak from my experience. A lot of my peers, they want wealth. They don't want the long-term, gratification.
Yeah, I say people want, everybody want to be wealthy until it's time to do what wealthy people do.
Yeah, absolutely. And so the fear around it, and like you said, that emotion side of it, some people get money and they hold on to it so tight and it slips away slowly, right? Other people get money and they burn a hole through their pocket, right? So it's just understanding it. And also, we were not taught a financial education. We went through, I can't say we, but I went through, right? K through 8, 9 through 12, bachelor's degree, not one IRS tax code class, right? Like nothing about taxes, but I was 16 when I started working. They told me to fill out the taxes. I said, well, how do I do this? It was like, we can't tell you that. So it's kept from us. All of this stuff is kept from us. So now that we're here and we have the platform, we have to spread the knowledge. That is our due diligence. That is our duty. And that is why, some of us have been chosen to do what we do. We cannot continue to walk blind in this space. We see the racial wealth gap is continuing to grow. Yeah. And as a matter of fact, by 2054, Black people will have zero net worth if we don't get it together. So I think that it's a couple of things, right? Financial background and education, also emotions around it. So people around you, what are they saying about money as well? Do you have McDonald's money? Okay, so these are conversations that are, and those things are embedded.
With what money?
Yeah, with what money? Do you think money grow on trees? I'm gonna start telling people, yeah, it actually does. Yeah, 17 trillion.
Right. 17 trillion, y'all. Hey, listen, I want you to stick around. We're gonna take a short break. But before you go, where can people find you, connect with you if they want to stay in touch with you?
Yeah, so you can follow me on my Instagram. So that is JASZHANE, Z as in zebra. So let me say that again, JASZHANE. And then they can hit me up. My business phone number is 312-805-1825.
Y'all make some noise for Jasmine McCluskey, y'all. All right, we'll be right back. All right, welcome to Dope People Podcast. We are continuing the $17 trillion conversation. I have to my immediate left, Miss Sharnice Miller. Make some noise for Sharnice Miller.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. Happy to be here. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you for coming. Thank you for trusting me with your time, because your time is valuable.
Indeed.
Indeed, right? Cookies or cake?
Cookies.
Resistance training or cardio?
Resistance training.
Short, what am I trying to say? A little fun fact. Sharnice is a award-winning bodybuilder, y'all. Yeah. Won awards for it.
We did well. Mm-hmm. Okay.
I'm going to come back to you and talk about what you do. Right?
Sure. Yep.
And then we have the man of the hour, really, Mr. Omari Kamal, y'all. Yeah. Omari, let me tell you, I'll tell you this. Omari is one step from the White House. And I don't mean being president. He is our modern day, I don't even know who to compare you to. There is no comparison. But Omari is going to save us. He's going to save us as a people. He's going to save Black folks. No, Obama can't see this dude. And that's real. Come on. No, that's not glazed, man. This is truth. You put in the work. But his title that he goes by is a fractional CFO, a fractional chief financial officer. Omari, what is a fractional CFO?
Thank you for all that, by the way. I got it all, and you'll see how uncomfortable that makes me. But a fractional CFO is somebody who is responsible for making sure that a growing business has a partner with helping them to be responsible for the financial affairs that often change as the business grows and scales. So that's just a real fancy way of saying that we help to raise money and we help to deploy the money that's then raised in all the various that it needs to. Because when businesses grow, entrepreneurs in the room, just kind of raise your hand. Business people, yep, most of y'all, I figured as much, right? So you all know that when businesses grow and change, everything changes. You got to hire people and fire people and take on new strategies and whatnot. And oftentimes, the big question is, where's the money going to come from, and where do I get more of it to do more of what's working with? Okay. So at a certain level, that's what we do. So it's kind of like an accountant, but we're more of a strategist. We help to plan and think.
You know, I'm coming back, right? Because Charnice, I met you at Chicago State. I was the teacher. I was the professor. You were.
I was a student at Chicago State, not directly under Professor Steward.
You were a student there.
Yeah, I was studying finance there. Yeah,
studying finance. So what do you do today? What are you doing today?
Yeah, so today I work in the financial space at a CDFI. It's a community development financial institution, and we work more so like a bank. So we lend to other nonprofits to develop spaces like this one. So if they need acquisition, land to develop, if they want to buy a building, if they want to lease a space and build it out, we give them loans to do that. But I work at a company called IFF, and in addition to lending, we also do real estate developing and consulting as a part of our service offering. And what I do there is a lender and underwriter officer. So that's my professional title.
So I wanted you to share that because I have found that many of us as a people are afraid of the numbers. We don't like to talk about numbers in our business. It's skip math. We don't like math, right?
I'm included. not scared, but don't like to talk about it.
Don't like to talk about it. How do you help make sense of this work? Like, I know I'm passionate about this conversation. Like, I get it. I see it. Some people are still like they haven't wrapped their minds around this, what $17 trillion is. Johnny, what do you think the problem is around people, entrepreneurs, really grappling with and understanding the numbers of the business?
Well, one, some entrepreneurs, depending on what the nature of their business is, just don't have a financial background. Okay, so in my business, I do a lot of consulting and advisory work just to get somebody to be prepared to apply for financing. You know what I mean? But you got to understand that if you didn't study this isn't your profession. You're good at what you do, whatever it is that you're doing, right? And so you're best to use your capacity to do that. I think that where we fail to realize is to be honest about the fact that we don't know, because a lot of people want to talk to me and they want to impress me. You know, they want to give me numbers to see, like, I know what I'm talking about. You know what I mean? Please, give me a loan to do this. And it's like, rather than, you know what, Charnice, this is what I do. I run a business. You know what I mean? I'm good at the operations. I'm good at selling. I'm good at teaching. I'm good at what I do. But I need your expertise. You know what I mean? Or I got to hire somebody to come in and do this. And I think that because we don't like talking about it, because money comes with, or the numbers come with some sense of pride or ego, or you're an entrepreneur that people expect you to know about money or how to run a business. And I think that just being honest about needing some education around it or some consulting around that is the first step, you know what I mean? And not being afraid to have the conversation about the numbers and money. So I think that's the biggest hurdle.
Thank you for sharing that. As an entrepreneur myself, Omari, you and I have had some very deep, transparent, vulnerable conversations around business and money. I have had cars repossessed. I've seen eviction papers. Lost a house, right? And then here you come talking about, well, there's $17 trillion out there. It's like, wait a minute. So how do you go from helping people, entrepreneurs, because I know I'm not by myself, I'm just not afraid to admit it. How do you help people go from overdraft fees to wrapping their mind around being able to participate in a $17 trillion economy?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a brilliantly crafted question, Scott, because it is going to take a transformation of sorts. It's going to take a whole new way of looking at ourselves and looking at finances, looking about money. Like, we're talking about money. And I don't know any of you all, but I know that on some level or another, you're thinking to yourself, oh, I know what that is. I know what money is. I know how to balance. I know how to budget and whatnot. And one of the things that I'm suggesting is that many of us have no idea what, I'm going to say it this way, what real money is. And let me just tell you what I mean by that. I used to work in the private equity space. So there's a whole section of our economy where these very, very wealthy individuals will find businesses that are on the rise and invest very large sums of money in them. And I worked in that space, fell into it very much so by accident. And I had to put this thing together called a cap table. Now, a cap table is a really basic kind of thing. It's a spreadsheet, and it shows, like, if we all started a business together, you had 20%, you had 20%, you had 10%, you had 15%, right? And I had 5%. We all say, okay, this is what we all own. This is our respective ownership. And my job basically was to do some fancy math to help these partnerships figure out how much that company was worth. Now, it didn't matter that they hadn't done anything ever. They hadn't actually produced a product. They were going to, kind of like what you were saying, Sharnice. They were going to do something, and they put a set of projections together, and my job was to use all of my fancy stuff from finance school to put together this thing called a valuation. So let's say the business is worth $1 million. So we take those percentages, we apply it, each of us know what our value is, and we agree that if something happens or some series of things happen in the business, that $1 million is going to go to $3 million. Mind you, I'm putting all this together in a spreadsheet. Nothing has actually happened. And the company I was actually doing this for had actually lost money for the last 3 to 5 years. But I got to be a part of a process where we were raising money in this private equity space for these companies that hadn't made any money yet. And yet, after a certain number of very perfunctory things happen, we would go out again and we'd raise even more money that would make all of us who just assign our positions have even greater percentages and even more money in our pocket. But no money had actually been earned in actuality. Y'all follow what I'm saying?
On paper versus...
On paper.
Unrealized versus realized.
Correct. So most of us, when we relate to money, we think about working harder, getting some more skills, getting some more education, and all that stuff is great and fantastic and wonderful. But in this big old world that we live in, there's some things that are just happening. I know this, you all know this intuitively, but there's some things that are happening that are just flat out hidden from our view. We don't see it. Yeah. It's not anything that's given to us, it's ever taught to us, not even in school, not even for those of us that had great, long educations. It's not something you're ever going to find in the textbook. The only way it's going to happen if somebody grabs you and says, come on, let me show you how this game is really played.
And I want to thank you for bringing me along your journey over these years and bringing this conversation to the viewers.
Yeah.
Because what I'm also clear about is it's not crowded. It's not crowded in this room. 90% are crowded right now. No, that's not a diss to Beyonce. I love her, right? Love what she's doing. That's crowded over there. But I want to be a part of the people that can make that concert happen.
Sure. Yeah.
I want to be a part of the people that can have Beyonce perform and get a piece of that economy, right? And shout out to all the people who are tapped in, because it seems like they want the same thing. So there's room at the table. I'm gonna stay with you for a second. How do we get there?
Well, I mean, the short answer is this. It was, you just kind of said it. I mean, in environments, very lightly crowded rooms like this, for what we're talking about, there are never going to be lines around the block. But for whatever matter of circumstance or whatever caught your eye that said, hey, this is a conversation I want to be in, I want to be about, that's where it happens, in my view, in my experience. And when you follow that little piece of intuition, it'll take you to where you ultimately need and want to go. And then from there, and again, Sharnice kind of pointed to it as well, it's a matter of leaving yourself open to maybe seeing something that you never saw before. Like, it just sort of hit me. All of a sudden, having an open mind that, oh, wow, there's a difference between earning money and making money. And then I started to get interested in like, okay, but what is that? What does that look like? I mean, I saw it in this document that I'm putting together, and I'm seeing it in these deals that are being put together. But what does that look like for me and for people that I like to hang out with?
Yeah.
And so I get into this argument with myself, and this is kind of the answer, I think, to your question, the best way I could articulate it at least. I get into this argument with myself to say, you know, because again, I'm just a little black boy from 111th Street. And I'm thinking about where I grew up and what it would take to bring this thing that I had learned to the people that I think could use it the most. And I get to arguing myself like, well, you know, there's no wealth in our community. There's no ability to grow and scale. There's no value. And I could be, you know, I said, well, hold on, that's not true. Because I would say, just in this room, I don't need to know any of y'all to know that if we added up all of our incomes, and Jasmine, I think you kind of pointed to it, I mean, we are some of the most resourceful group of people in the whole planet. You add up all our incomes collectively, we probably got a couple $1 million just right in this room, right in this very sparse room right now. So that's not true. And it's certainly not true by virtue of the fact that you see all these other people coming into our community setting up businesses continually. It doesn't matter how bad the business looks. There are always these new businesses that are popping up, the nail salons, the beauty supply stores, the liquor stores. I mean, so
somebody sees value in this community.
Value there. So there's money there to be mined. And through a whole assortment of back and forths, a number of those conversations that you and I had, it hits me. We're not producers. We're consumers. We are a complete consumer class of people.
What can I buy?
And yeah, is there something for us to be responsible for? Sure. But we relate to coming up, and Jasmine's kind of speaking to this a moment ago, like we relate to coming up, like what we wear, whether or not we can go to a Beyonce concert, what kind of car we drive. This is the stuff that we celebrate, wittingly or unwittingly. And when I say we, I'm talking about us as a collective.
Yeah.
I'm saying that like what's on our television screen, what's on our phones, what we engage with, what we celebrate, what we encourage our kids to do, is all a matter of this sort of water that we're swimming in called consumerism. And it's going to take, just like any major movement, any movement that's ever happened, is going to take a select few of folks who are able to pull themselves up out of it through whatever measure and say, okay, I'm about to be about something different. I'm about to engage in and educate myself around something different, something new that could possibly make a difference in the world. And that's what I say it's going to take to have that kind of radical shift you're talking about to, on one hand, say, I'm flirting with overdrive right now, to like, you know what, I'm interested in a chunk of the 17 trillion, not necessarily so I can have more things to buy, but for the difference it could make with the things I care about.
Yeah.
So I want to ask the $17 trillion question. You want to comment?
I was going to expound on that a little bit, if I may.
Please.
Okay.
Yes.
Just going back to as I was thinking through your question and then where you just went about this, about where we are and where we see ourselves in this, or at least what's keeping us from the $17 trillion. So I think we're just now at the wave of entrepreneurship, at least for the last couple of decades, right? Yeah. Whereas before, the businesses were passed down in the family. You know what I mean? Where we are now, that we go to school and we study professions to go get jobs.
Right.
You know what I mean? And we've gotten away from what you talked about earlier was legacy. You're talking about leaving down, passing on money. We passed on businesses. Whatever your father was, he was a shopkeeper, he was a shoemaker, you know, your mom was a cook, whatever. They operated in those businesses and they offered those services and they taught it to those kids, to their kids. And that was the legacy. And so we've gotten away from that. And so now we're just trying to rebuild and we're trying to restart. And then I think at this juncture where we're missing the mark, we're focusing on the money, probably too much. You know, we're not really considering our intent, our mission and our purpose in our business. And the product is suffering. The quality of it is suffering. You know what I mean? And we think that support is, you need to go and buy black. You know what I mean? We just need to stick together and circulate our dollar in the community. And we're still missing the mark on what we're giving to each other. You know what I mean? And so I think that the first thing is legacy. We're going to school, we're getting educated, we're taking jobs, and we're not teaching entrepreneurship. We're focusing on financial literacy. And we don't know how to operate businesses anymore. We have no businesses passed down to us to be producers, to your point. And the other thing is the types of businesses. We're all doing the same things because we're learning from each other. We're looking on social media and we're seeing what somebody else does and we're hitting them up like, hey, how'd you get into that? How'd you do that? I'm going to do that. I'm going to get a piece of this pie. And we're not tapping into the fundamentals of business, of society, the very infrastructure, you know what I mean? Getting into agriculture, utilities, banking. You know, we need more Black banks because we need, that money is what runs the country when you're talking about the infrastructure. And we don't have control over that at all. You know, we're at the mercy of it. And so I just wanted to touch on that when you're talking about how do we access this $17 trillion. We really need a radical shift in mindset about the legacy, about what we're doing, about our businesses, what types of businesses that we have, what kind of money can we make with the businesses that we have.
So I have to ask the $17 trillion question. Omari, how did you get to $17 trillion and what in the world does it mean to us?
Okay.
And I know, put your seatbelts on because this is the apex, this is the meat and potatoes of this conversation.
All right. So that argument I told you I got in with myself about, like, I want to take this that I learned about the difference between earning money and making money. I want to take it to my community. But then I said to myself, hold on, what does that mean? Because there's no value in our community. I go into this back and forth with myself, but there's no value, but of course there's value. And then that's what it dawns on me, producers versus consumers. So it dawned on me that there wants to be this new movement, this new economic movement for our folks. I argue that there's been two movements. There's a freedom movement for us in this country. There's a freedom movement of the 1860s, from slavery to emancipation, civil rights movement, from radical discrimination to something of an ability to move around a little differently than we did before, okay? That was a movement. A whole radical shift in thought, mentality, relationship to ourselves, each other, and the world. I'm suggesting that there wants to be another movement, an economic movement, a way in which people relate to each other differently than they ever have before each other, particularly with respect to our money. And I would argue that that's a movement that always wanted to happen, but we always got distracted. Like when you think about 40 Acres and a Mule, when you think about the debate between civil rights and silver rights, you know, there was a large cross-section of people who arguably what got King killed wasn't his civil rights work. Is that when you start talking about the money and the imbalance of wealth is when things began to shift for him in terms of his relationship with the power structure. But that, being that as it may, here's what it dawned on me. In the course of this inquiry, I decided to Google the aggregate net worth of Black folks in America. And to my surprise, you know, I couldn't find it. It's not something that's ever been studied. You've heard Black buying power, right? Y'all heard that trope? Like we have this many trillions of Black buying power. If we were a country, you know, we'd be the 14th richest country in the world, right? Y'all have heard that before? Yeah. I know the guy that coined that phrase. His brother named Ken Smichael. He's passed away now. He owned a company called Target Market News. Do you remember Ken Smichael?
Yeah, absolutely.
Ken Smichael, we used to argue. I used to tell him, like, man, that's a BS statistic, I would tell him. He's like, young buck, you don't know what you're talking about. What do you mean? I'm like, look about what you're doing. You're tallying up our spending power as Black folks, and you're selling it to these white corporations, getting us to buy more stuff that we don't need. And I'm like, look, I'm fine with your statistic. I'm just saying, can we balance it and begin to talk about ownership? And this comes back to Jasmine's question. Can we start to educate ourselves about the only thing that's ever built wealth in the world, which is this idea about ownership? Can we talk about that? Can we measure that? He's like, you don't know what you're talking about. And so I would go back and forth with him. So at some point in this conversation that I'm having with myself, I say, well, look, let me study this for myself. Let me get at this for myself. So I Googled it, had not been studied before. So I started to back into it. So I looked up the per capita net worth of of Black folks in America. Now, in some studies, it's actually negative. Like we have a negative net worth per capita. On average, we have more debt than we do assets as a people. Now, that's not including Oprah and Michael Jordan and Robert Smith and all these other billionaires, right? Now, if you add them back in there, it's going to come up to $25,000. Our average net worth is $25,000. Now, even that's tragic compared to majority society, $175,000 a year, average net worth compared to our paltry $25,000. But I said, so be it. Let me just do the math on this thing. I heard this statistic by this guy named Claude Anderson. Y'all get a chance, read this book called Powernomics by Dr. Claude Anderson, right? You read that, right? So brilliant book on this interview that Claude Anderson is doing. He says, the source of Black people's issues is that we don't own and control anything. We own and control 1/2 of 1%. You heard that? This nation's
so that's
one half of 1%.
1/2 of 1%.
1/2 of 1% is the nation's resources. And something struck me about that. I said, that's interesting. Let me go look I wonder where he found that stat from, and I couldn't find it anywhere. So I looked it up. I couldn't find it out in aggregate. So I said, let me just tally it up. And I said that $25,000 multiplied it times the 40 some odd million dollars that there are of us in this country. I came up with 168 billion. If you Google net worth of the United States, you'll come up with that number. It's 124 trillion. It's actually a little bit more now since I did this math, right? But at the time it was 124 trillion dollars. I took the 168 million, divided it into 124 trillion. I came up with that number, 1/2 of 1%. That's where he got it from. And I said, wow, isn't that something? And what's odd about that number is it hasn't moved since slavery. That's the exact same amount. Because all Black folks weren't slaves at emancipation, right? So 1/2 of 1%, what we owned in 1865, is the exact same percentage that we own today. So if anybody asks you the question or gets you into some philosophical debate about whether or not we progressed in this country, it sure looks like it. But in actuality, when you watch the news, read the paper, look at what's going on in your neighborhoods around you, you can see not much has changed. And so the question for me became, what would justice look like? What would justice amount to in the way of math? Well, that was easy. I just took the 17% or so, 14% of us that are in this country, multiplied it times 124 trillion, 17 trillion. Now,
24
trillion. That's the net worth of the whole United States.
And then 1/2 of 1% of that.
14%.
14%.
Right, because my question is, what would justice look like? What would freedom look like? What would power look like? So I took the 14% of us that are here, multiplied it times 124 trillion. That comes up with 17 trillion. Now, those are just numbers. But just imagine the state change that would have to occur for us to go from 168 billion to 124 trillion. Now, for those of y'all that can't appreciate large numbers, right, that's a huge difference. If you started to count right now, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, you couldn't count to 17 trillion before you passed away. I don't care how young you are in the room. It's a gargantuan number. So my first thought was one of being defeated. Like, there's no way. But then I had this experience with this cap table. And I said, no, these people are creating that all the time. And if you do the math and you look at the census, there is no group of people that are starting more LLCs, more corporations, more S corporations, more DBAs than us. And I thought, well, maybe we're already clued into something. I wish that were the case. But here's the truth of the matter is, with COVID, with the downturn of 28, with the Great Recession of 2008, and everything that's happened there in between, we know work is different for us. We don't have rich uncles, rich aunties, they can pay for some sports maybe here and there, but they can't really, they still got $20,000 life insurance policies, right? We have got people like that. Sure. But we are starting businesses at an incredible rate. And we're starting to get our arms around this idea of entrepreneurship and what it means. And one of the things that I'm positing is that when the code cracks for us, when we get to the heart of how, again, money is made, nothing wrong with earning it, but how money is really made in this country and around the world, I'm suggesting that there's going to be a cracking open of something. There's going to be something available to us, but it's not going to come automatically. It's not going to come without some effort. But that's where the number comes from, and what I'm suggesting it could amount to.
Can y'all make some noise for that math? That's why this conversation was important. I want to leave, and there might be a couple of questions in the audience, maybe not, but we're about to wrap. I'd want to ask all of you to think about what a couple of things that we can do today, right, to get on track. I want to start with you, Jasmine. What do you think? Freestyle off the top of your head, a couple of things that we as a people can do today to change our reality around access to capital in this country.
Yeah. So first and foremost, $17 trillion. That is a lot. And I want everybody to say, I got some of that. Okay. Claim it. Don't let it be so far away that it can't be yours. It is a mindset shift and all of that, but you are very capable of getting a piece of that pie. I'll say for myself and what I do, the only way that I access it is you have to have these licenses, right? We have baby boomers, they're retiring. And like Omari said, most of that capital and wealth is not ours in the Black community. So in order for me to access it, that license is going to be very key. And that's the securities industry, the investment licenses. And so having that license and then moving the money, right? Because it has to transfer hands one way or another. Old 401ks, life insurance policies, old investments, brokerage accounts, selling homes, all of those things. It has to move hands. So we just got to position ourselves because it's a unique opportunity to position yourself. So I would say, number one, hit me up and get the license. But also number two, if that's not your interest, right, start investing. Start receiving some interest on what's happening in the market. And then number three, just get educated. Get educated. Come to things like this. This is what's going to move you way further in life. And I'm just going to be honest, right? Instead of a new pair of shoes, instead of a new hairdo, all of that stuff is cool for the meantime. But what are you really leaving, right? I don't want shoes. I don't want to leave my kids' shoes. You know what I'm saying? And, oh, yeah, mine had to get her hair done. So you can't, whatever with sports. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Some of the stuff we can do ourselves, too. We got to just be honest with it. But, yeah, that's pretty much it. That's what I got to say. So,
Charnese, what are some things that we can do from your purview today? What can we leave here, take home and look, we about to start doing this right now. For me, recently, it was going back to putting my loose change into a mason jar. I know that it's just and that's, I have small children, want them to see it. It's just something small. What are some things that people could do?
Okay, I'm going to give you something practical, and then I'm going to give you where I really am about this conversation. I'm going to just be honest. But on the practical sense, what I've learned, and I've done some financial coaching and consulting in the past with personal people too, the people just don't look. People are afraid to look at what they got going on. They don't want to look at the debt. They don't know their number. They don't know their credit score. They don't know these things. And I think that's the first step, to look. And then you got to start building. You just have to start building some traction. You know what I mean? I think that some people don't have the stamina. You know what I mean? Some people don't have the discipline. And I don't think they recognize that the relationship between that. I don't care how much you know, how much I can tell you or teach you or the tools to do. If you don't have discipline, I mean, you can practice it with something else, then nothing's going to happen with your financial situation. So I think you do need to work on the discipline and actually just knowing, being aware of the numbers and where you are and aware of yourself. Back to where I feel like we are now, just the state of our economy and administration and everything that's going on, we don't know what's going to happen in terms of our economy. You know what I mean? And I feel like there's so much looking around and not looking within. I think people need to, at this time, reconsider their intents. I think people need to tap into what their purpose is in life and just what you want to offer. Because I think once you get in tune with those things and what you master, everything you need, all the resources that we need are going to come to us. I think that we need collaboration. We need partnership. There's still things that we need to fix within ourselves and our community. There's deep mistrust amongst each other. There's no way we're going to get to the larger numbers, to a $17 trillion, without being able to partner with the people next to us. And that starts with us internally. So I think that we need to really, at this time, take our focus away from the money just a little bit and to figure out what is inherently the issue behind the numbers. You know what I mean? I think that we're too focused on that and we remain, to what Omari said earlier, just distracted. We're just distracted and then we're running in a circle. And so I think that we just need to consider where we're coming from and we'll band together and move forward.
I hope you all are taking at least some mental notes. Yeah, give it up to Charnese.
Absolutely.
I will offer up. I have a book of Stewisms. You can buy a copy today. And one of the isms is if you're doing it for money, you're doing it for the wrong reasons. I don't believe money can be the motivator. Having had my own financial challenges and starting to now think I might have some idea of really what to do. Be patient financially. Be patient financially. To your point, as much as I love sneakers, I don't need another pair. I honestly don't need another pair.
Shoe game is crazy.
It's ridiculous. But be patient with yourselves financially. And really, Jasmine, you said it earlier, how can I use this money to generate more money? Right? I know we got to eat, we got to pay those certain bills, and we like our streaming services, right? But how can I get some return on this investment? And looking at that credit score, you got to do that. You got to do that. Omari, what are some things that people can do? And I almost feel like we didn't really do this conversation the justice that it deserves, because we didn't really dig into like the business that you hinted on, like the quality of businesses that we're offering people, like especially like because we're close and we know each other and we want to do business. Like
trying to make money.
I'm just gonna make a little money. I ain't gonna give you the full service. And then when you want to give full service, it's like, oh, I got to give you full service. It's like, well, wait a minute. I'm giving you full money. I'm
no
giving
passion,
you real
no purpose.
cash money. Like, what's happening? And that's something that that it makes room for more of this conversation to happen.
Yeah.
But Omari, man, what do we need to do, bro?
You said off the dome, just the first couple things that came to mind. One was something you just said reminded me. Y'all ever read this book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad?
Yeah.
Remember the part in the book where the kid, Robert Kiyosaki, young Robert Kiyosaki, went to his rich dad and was like, look, I really need you to pay me more money. My poor dad is going to kill me, man, if you keep if you keep paying me this amount of money. And so he ends up quitting and he's miserable. And so he comes back to the rich dad and he's like, all right, look, if you could at least pay me this, then it will be cool. And the rich dad is like, you know what? You can come back to work for me, but I'm not going to pay you anything. He's like, what? And he goes through this whole process, and finally he, says, forget it. I'll work it out. I'll work it out with my poor dad, and that'll be just fine. So he ends up starting the comic book stand, if y'all remember that. And he hired his friends to rent the comic books for him. And when he put all his money together, he saw that he made some multiple of what he was asking in the first place. And it strikes him that, oh, wow, he didn't pay me anything. That forced me to be creative. And when I figured out my own thing, I made more than I could have even dreamed that was possible. And so he went to his rich dad and he says, what was the lesson in that? We've been through a few of these types of instances and I don't get the lesson. What was the lesson? He says the lesson was never work for money. Only work for education. Which isn't to say don't be responsible for the money, don't understand the money, but it is to say never work for it. And so just what you said and then what Sharnice said really reminded me of that, because even though it sounds like we're talking about money, we're not. We're talking about something way deeper than that. And so my little offers, speaking of Robert Kiyosaki, if y'all ever played his game, Cash Flow 101, I'd highly, highly recommend it. It's like Monopoly on steroids. If y'all have ever had a good Monopoly battle at the crib, check out Cash Flow. It's like, it's got two tracks. It's got its inner circle and it's got the outer circle. The inner circle is the fast track. It's like what we're all used to, living paycheck to paycheck. You buying stuff you ain't got no business buying, right? Go bankrupt, divorce. I mean, all that stuff happens in the inner circle, right? But the idea, the point of the game is to get onto the outer ring, was what they call the fast track. And when you get, and how you get there is your passive income, meaning the money you get from your investments, from your rental properties, from your businesses, has to exceed your expenses. And then once you've exceeded your expenses, now you're on the fast track. And either A, you bought your dream, or B, your passive income is $50,000 per month. And that's when you've won the game. And it is a hoot. And what's incredible about it is that as you're making these moves and these different decisions out of the game, you're talking to your family and your friends about why you made that decision, why you made that move, why you jumped out on a limb with that investment or whatever the case may be. And there are things that you're having to explore about the way you relate to family, about the way you relate to yourself spiritually, about your just habits about money, because it's weird how it happens. I haven't figured out how he does this, but the way you show up in the game, or the way you show up in life is the way you show up in game. If you have a habit of spending before you get it, that'll show up in the game. If you have a habit of jumping out for every little thing that people present to you, every opportunity, and you just like, yeah, sign me up, and you know you ain't got no room for that, that'll show up in the game. So that's one thing. But beyond that, few books. I'm a reader. So I mentioned Powernomics. There's another brilliant book inside of this Black wealth context I really love called Saving Black America, an Economic Plan for Civil Rights. Saving Black America, an Economic Plan for Civil Rights. Beautiful book. Dr. John Yancey Odom is the gentleman who wrote it. It's out of print. You may have to spend a little money to get it, but it's worth it. But beyond that, the other two, just for this conversation, I think would be valuable, is Profit First by Mike McAllowicz, Built to Sell by John Warlow, and we got Jasmine and Charnice here. So One Up on Wall Street. What was the brother's name? Peter Lynch. So I would say check those out. You need me to repeat those? I'm here tonight. But I would say check those out in the context of what we're talking about. You will be transformed in the reading of those.
Hey, listen, this has been a very heavy conversation. This ain't for everybody. Thank you all for joining us. I'm really big on starting on time and ending on time, although I run late a lot. But we're going to end on time tonight. Q&A, did you have a question?
I do. As someone who's very young and still kind of in business in the world of investing and things like that, what advice would because I kind of invest in a little things, but it's like I'm learning all about this from trial and error. So what advice would you give someone like young folk that's trying to get the generation to reach that 17 trillion?
Yeah.
You want to take that?
I think that's actually perfect way to be not 17, but young, want to go after the 17 trillion, right? And so clearly your mind is already, on track, right? So continue to develop that further. And then also we can talk about some things. I think sometimes we think that financial literacy or a financial plan is just a blanket statement. It's not. It's specific to you and what your goals are. And so when we can explore that, we can say, hey, this is the route that you should take, right? But I think just, we can have a chat after this and, just kind of explore what are your goals? What do you really want? But by you being young, I think that's the perfect opportunity because you'll become a millionaire just like that.
Totally. If I could add something to that too, so just very much so to Jasmine's point, really start where you are. Surround yourself with great people who know what they're talking about and can support you and guide you and encourage you in that way. What I would offer too is just, given that you are young and a lot of us who are not young are looking at you like, wishing that we would have had the wherewithal to even ask the question. There you go.
At Brooks.
There you go, right? Yeah, no, but so just a couple of, so some math problems I encourage you just to kind of marinate on, and I think it works no matter how old you are. One of the questions I really love asking people is, how do you know you can afford your lifestyle? And they say, well, I don't know, how do you mean? And I say, well, look, think about it this way. Each of us has to live someplace, right? We know where we have to live. We know what kind of rent we pay. How much does it cost to live in the city of Chicago? I'm not talking about just rent, mortgage. What does it take to live in a place where nobody's gonna knock you over the head? Like how much? Somebody throw out a number.
$3,200.
Yeah, monthly rent, monthly mortgage. Like, what does it take? Just
$1,500.
$1,500 at a minminimum.
3,200.
$3,000.
I was gonna go high. I was trying
Just basically, I'm not talking about crazy. I'm just talking about somewhat safe.
Right. Okay, somewhat safe.
2,000, 2,500.
2,000.
We all 2,000. Shanice's like her down.
I'm trying to do luxury
What'd you
living.
say?
No, I'm just trying to. I'm with you.
2,500. Let's go with 20. Everybody cool with 2,500?
No,
Okay.
he just asked, not necessarily for him, just period.
Period. In general, on average.
Yeah, just on average.
Right? So we agree. Just to live basically. I'm not talking about big, fancy, right? $2,000, $2,500 a month. Most people need 2 to 3 times their housing payment just to keep head and nose above water. So if you tell me you're paying $2,000, $2,500 in rent, I know that your budget is probably minimum $5,000, $6,000 per month, right? Just to keep head and nose above water. Now, that's just head and nose above water. To save a little money, to educate yourself, to pay your tithes and offering that's what you're into, right? Whatever the case may be, that number needs to double. So if we go from just basic, $2,500 a month, $5,000 just keeping head and nose above water, and I'm being conservative, right?
Yeah.
My personal belief is that you should be living off half your income. What do you mean? So 10% goes to one of those wealth building accounts that Jasmine was talking about earlier. 10% goes to, I call it gift, tithes, offering, whatever you want. 10% giveaway. There's a great principle in wealth that when you give it away, it comes back to you. So always find some way to give it away. Give something away. 10% towards play. Look, you're gonna buy your shoes anyway, man. Go ahead and budget for the thing. Go ahead, but budget for it, right? And you put it into that account, and then once it's gone, it's gone. But budget for it. 10% of that. 10% towards what I call long-term savings for spending. So some of y'all got some cars you got your eye on, furniture sets you got your own. You deserve that stuff. Trips, travels. Our niece is a big traveler. You deserve that stuff. Just save for it, plan for it. And then 10% towards your education. That's wealth, gift, play, education, long-term savings for spending. 10% to each one of those. Divide that 50% into that $5,000, you're gonna get $10,000. $10,000 is what you need in order to afford just a basic lifestyle in the city of Chicago. We haven't even added taxes yet.
Right.
Now add another $2,000 onto that. That's $150,000 a year. What percentage of us you think are making $150,000 a year? And if you're not making that, you're making some uncomfortable sacrifices. So first step is very much so like that Rich Dad Poor Dad example I gave. Start to think about what you can really afford. And if it sounds like a lot of money, just let that go. You can make that money.
Yeah.
It's out there to be made. And don't get so caught up in the 17 trillion. We're about, find your chunk of that. And then once you get clear about that and how to make that and what that looks like for you, and there's some version of that for each of us. Each of you has some unique talent, gift, passion, something that when you really step out there and do it, that money will come back to you. And then after you figure that out, I'd love to talk to you, because then there's another level called building your asset base up to an amount that if you sold your business and somebody handed you a big pot of money for that business and you take it to Jasmine and she shows you how to invest it and it pays you out 8, 9, 10, 12, 14%, you take out 5% of that, you'll be fine for life. So $150,000 in revenue for just a $2,500 asset. You adjust the math for whatever your situation is. And then, I don't want to say it, but I don't want to hit people with too much math. Take the $150,000, multiply it times 20. Why am I saying that? Because if you had a business and you sold it, and that's another big shift that we have to go through as a people. Like, our businesses aren't just for our own us, right? And Charnice made this point as well. They're wealth building tools. And when you find out a way to put the structure on them, they become very much so like a piece of real estate that you can exchange and sell and transfer amongst heirs, et cetera, et cetera. And that's my personal passion and commitment, that people really learn how to do that. And then when you do that, you start to learn that $150,000, how you pay yourself that for the rest of your life is you take that asset, you sell it, or you transfer it to the next generation, or whatever you do with it. You get $3 million back, invest it, and that pays you that $150,000 for the rest of your life. And I'm saying that always, always, always wants to be everybody's ambition. That's my thing. It's going to look a lot of different ways for everybody. But anybody has questions about that, talk to me. But those types of things you can start to practice and engage in and start to educate yourself in now. And how you make the connection is, whatever your passions are, whatever your gifts are, use it to that advantage. But it's there to be made. Just know the numbers, and you'll bridge them.
I'll ask another question.
No. I was just going to end with, I'm going to give you the Dave Ramsey. Okay. If you guys know who he is. Just right now, what you can do at this stage right now. First, I want you to start getting educated, get on YouTube, get all the financial help books you can get. Put $1,000 up right now as fast as you can as an emergency fund. Totally. If you have any debt, that's what you want to start working on, because you can start investing with Jasmine or whatever. But if you haven't paid everything off and you don't have anything for emergencies, you're going to keep bottoming out. Okay. So just get $1,000 saved, pay off your debt. You're going to work on saving 3 to 6 months of your expenses. Then you go and talk to Jasmine. But you got to have a good system. Build the discipline. Everybody has got good systems around your money. So take 3 to 4 weeks. It's going to be hard. You're used to get the spreadsheet out, get the books out and everything. But commit yourself to 3 to 4 weeks and really set yourself up to a system and commit to following it. And then you have to track it. You have to track it, because if you're not looking, you don't know if your money is growing or if it's going backwards. So make sure every day you commit some time, set aside to build this system out, follow it, build your discipline, and you'll start to see some progress. That's what you can do right now today.
Yeah, I just want to kind of touch on that, Sharnice. I don't know. So I'm actually a financial advisor and an investment advisor. So I do both. So, debt elimination is all in there. Emergency fund is also in there, right? The entire program and structure is in there. And then also accountability, right? So sometimes when we're putting that money away, is it going into an account like a high yield savings? Like, what are we doing with that $1,000? That's for an emergency. That's for a rainy day, right? And sometimes we think things are emergencies. They're really not emergencies. Take a day. And if you don't need it, you don't need it. But if that money is right there and you could just grab it and you got that $1,000, that money is gone just like that. Because it's discipline and you have to work toward it. That's what financially fit is. It's a muscle. You got to keep building. You just don't go to the gym thinking you're about to bench 150 pounds. It don't work like that, right? You're going to start where you are, 80, okay? And work your way up. So that's just pretty much what I wanted to say. I just wanted to, talk to you about that. But yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Get you some systems.
Yeah. Thank you. I want to, people got stuff to do. I need to keep with the time, but they'll be hanging out as long as they can hang out, and you can have these conversations with them as you see fit. We're going to do this again. We have to do this again. Jasmine, where can people, you already told us, tell us again. Yeah. Where can people find you if they want to connect with you?
Yeah, so you guys can find me on Instagram. My Instagram is JASZHANE. And then also my business phone number. So you can call, text 312-805-1825.
Okay. Sharnice.
I am also on Instagram at Sharnice, CHARNIESEM, as in Miller. And I'm also on Facebook at Sharnice Miller.
I just realized how many times I spell your name wrong. Forget the E. Right. The E is too. Okay. Omari, where can people find you, brother?
I'm sure
you're hard to find.
I'm sure I'm on social media.
But LinkedIn for sure.
LinkedIn for sure.
Champ.
But not nearly as much as I probably could be or should be. But the easiest way is profitandgrowth.com. PROFITANDGROWTH.com. And you'll find all of my contact information there. And you'll be able to email me or call me or don't try to find me on social media.
You can scan the QR codes on the monitors. The QR codes are for all the people in the room that have businesses here. Elijah, moments easily made. So scan the QR codes around. We're going to wrap this conversation. But thank you all for coming out. Make some noise for this conversation. Many more to come. Thank you all. Thank you very much for being here. Omari, thank you, brother. Thank you, Jasmine. Being here. All right, and that's it.